What's up, everybody? We are back with the Rich at Heart podcast. I'm Rudy.
I'm Sade.
And we're happy that you're joining us for another discussion today. We're going to take a deep dive into Valentine's Day. We're going to also talk about relationships in general, marriage, and just overall like a love episode, just like a kind of...
'Tis the season. Oh, I can do completely without Valentine's Day. For me personally, maybe it was just like my situations before, but it's not super important to me. Yeah. Is it important to you?
No, not really. I mean, I've kind of, I don't know, in the last like 10 years, maybe I've just kind of been like, oh, fuck, whatever, Valentine's Day, you know?
But is it important to your partner?
Well, no, not right now. It's like her, she's never really been into Valentine's, even though when we were younger, we did do Valentine's Day pretty big. And we used to get each other like really nice gifts and shit like that. Actually, her first engagement ring I got her was on Valentine's Day. I bought it. She knew about it. And then we waited to tell her parents until the summer. So that's like a long story in itself.
Is this public knowledge? Because it is now.
Yeah, it is now. But I mean, she knows. But
she knows.
But yeah, and then once we had kids and stuff, and then we were separated and off and on again, it just got less and less important to our relationship. And to the point now we're like, I don't even know what we did last year, but maybe we'll do dinner. Like we'll be like, okay, but it's always about her. She's always about like, it's about the kids. Like, let's make sure our son who's in school has what he needs for Valentine's Day. We'll get both kids something cute, right? And if there's anything left over after that, we'll maybe have dinner or something. You know what I mean?
Do you think we're just like jaded because like maybe we've had like rocky goes for like a little while, yeah, with Valentine's Day? Because like I feel like maybe if every Valentine's Day was like super special and like something to look forward to, like, you know, the relationship was good every Valentine's Day, like it was dinner, like we focused on each other, then like, yeah, that would be like the bar, right, and like that's what we would expect. But for me personally, like that's not how the last few Valentine's Days have gone. So like now I'm just like, I don't give a fuck. But and so like, and maybe for you, yeah, like maybe same thing, like had a traumatic experience on Valentine's Day with an engagement ring. So right now it's like welcome PTSD.
Yeah, it's so PTSD because like, oh, I got her the goddamn ring on Valentine's Day and then it didn't work out. And then
yeah, so like now you have like some, like subconsciously, like you're like thinking about Valentine's Day as like it's not for love. And I think like when you have kids too, like it is fun to do things like for the kids, but
the dynamic of it.
But without y'all's love,
right? The kids
wouldn't be here.
Yeah, that's true.
So like first things first.
Right, first things first. That's very true. I actually really like that perspective because that's very true. So going into that, like what was the worst Valentine's Day that you had? Maybe that has caused some Valentine's Day scarring.
Caused my PTSD.
Yeah.
I think I have PTSD, like, and I can't even like think about it. It's like you just like
you don't want to relive.
Push them back, like push it back,
like a Vietnam War veteran.
Yeah. So you come into like exposure therapy. Yeah. Ooh, like the worst Valentine's Day. I honestly can't remember specifics, but I just know that like a plan that we had, like maybe it was like to go to dinner and like do an activity, like didn't happen, didn't even leave the house because like there was a fight that was happening. So like Valentine's Day. So like that was probably like the worst, like where like there was plans and like they just didn't happen. And then yeah, I know I've had them. Again, I probably just suppressed, so might come out later, and I can like think about it.
Oh, that's what.
Yeah, that's why it sucked. What about you?
I was just trying to think too. I mean, I've had some crazy Valentine's Days, right? Where at one point in time, I had been dating this girl, and I had kind of started talking to her friend, and and we were we were on the way of breaking up. Like it was the relationship was souring, but her friend started to like me and I started to like her friend, and it kind of all came to a big climax.
Just around that time.
It was around that time. It was around Valentine's Day. It didn't all happen on Valentine's Day, but it was like it led up to the point of climax between the whole situation, because if I remember correctly, I'd gotten them both something.
Was it a climax or the shit hit the fan?
She hit the fan. So I had gotten them both something, right? But they're friends, so they must have told each other like, "Hey, I got this from him."
Was it the same thing?
I can't remember. It was probably about the same thing, but not the exact same one. Like maybe one bear was brown, one bear was, red or something. Right? One rose was pink, one rose was yellow, or whatever, right? But I'd gotten them basically the same thing, and then kind of like it was like, oh shit, he got us the same shit. He's trying to play us. It's like, no, like I'm trying to be cool about this, in my perspective, in my eyes, I'm like, no, like we're in a relationship. I know we're gonna be breaking up, like we're not getting along, but I also kind of want to enter into this relationship, so I just don't want to be like, hey, I'm not getting you anything, getting you something, or I'm not getting you something because I'm in a relationship with somebody, right? So it was just young thinking, right? Thinking I could have my cake and eat it too. And they ended up fighting. There were two friends that had caused a fight between the two of them. And I felt bad about it like years later because like, I don't think they talk now.
Side eye. Side eye. How old were we? How old are
this was I think it was sophomore year.
I wasn't one of the girls.
It was sophomore
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay, we'll give you grace. Like their brain
a long time ago.
was not even nearly being fully developed.
Close.
Okay. All right. So like if this was like some shit that happened like when you were like 28, like
Oh, yeah.
side eye, but you were still a child, so it's okay. But it still counts as like a Valentine's Day experience for sure.
Yeah.
So it was like a really good Valentine's Day. That's like that was one for the books. Like,
Oh, okay. What was a good one?
yeah.
I don't know. There's been several, and like without getting in trouble with my current relationship, right? Because we had great Valentine's Days too. Like I said, we used to do it really big. Like we'd get each other nice gifts. We would spend all night having a good time, right?
Okay.
Great time. But there was one Valentine's Day where I was in different relationship, and Valentine's Day was approaching, and it was like I think it was our first Valentine's Day together. And she was like, hey, we should go to Vegas because like tax returns had just come in and stuff like that. And she's like,
love that.
Yeah, she's like, we should go to Vegas. And it was like kind of like just on a last minute, fuck it, let's do it, Yeah. And so we took her car, we drove down there. We were going to stay at a relative of mine's house, but it was too uncomfortable. So we ended up getting like a last minute cheap as fuck hotel. Oh, no. Like it was pretty ghetto hotel. It was pretty ghetto.
No, like just step on that. It's fine.
But we did it. We still had a good time. We watched the NBA All-Star break because she was like really into the NBA like I was, like I am too. And so that was like really cool because like, I mean, I've even my relationship, I mean, now she doesn't watch sports at all. Like she can give a fuck less about sports. She has sports teams that she roots for,
right?
But she's just not really like into sports. Right. Where like I like to watch sports, right? But this person loved it, and so it was kind of cool because I was able to watch all the events I wanted to watch for NBA All-Star Weekend and still do Valentine's Day stuff. Like still go to dinner, still try to go to clubs, all that shit. Yeah. So that was fun. That was a good Valentine's Day. What about you?
Okay. I can't. I'm so traumatized. What was a good Valentine's Day? I think with my maybe like with my last partner, I was in school still, and she had come and like decorated my car while I was in class, and so like she had a spare key or whatever, and she came and like put all these like hearts and like all this candy and these flowers like in the car. So like when I got out of class, like the car was blasted. So like that was really nice, and that was like really cool because like I wasn't expecting anything since like I have class until like 8. Yeah. Like so I don't know if like you really want to do anything. I've had a long day. I was like working and like whatever. So so she came and did that, and like that was really nice. Relationship before that, there's also something else that was kind of like over the top, and I just can't even like think about it because like I try not to think about her. Again, just suppressing things. But I was like,
just depressing.
I don't want to go there. But probably like the decorating of the car. Which was like, it was cute, and it was like something that you do like in high school, like when you decorate someone's like locker or something like that. Or like, will you go to prom with me and those stupid signs?
Yeah.
Not stupid. It's but that would probably be my probably my best Valentine's Day. Okay, so like what's your ideal Valentine's Day? Like what would you want to do now, having all those other experiences? Like if you had the time, the kids were gone.
Take
like,
care of.
what would be an appropriate Valentine's Day activity right now at the age of our mid-30s? If you want to always bring that
Bring it up all the time. No, I think I don't know if it was like all the resources were available to me, right?
all the resources.
Yeah, it would be like I would like to take a vacation every Valentine's Day, kind of like make it memorable. Kind of like how you were saying, like it maybe if there was something that you were looking forward to, right? Like other holidays, you look forward to family time. You know, you look forward to maybe food, Christmas because like gifts exchanging and stuff like that. And so if it was something to build to, like I had all resources available to me for Valentine's Day, yeah, it would be like going on a trip together, even if it's like a 2-day, 3-day trip, and just like enjoying each other's company.
Yeah.
Instead of having to worry about everything in the outside world where it's harder to enjoy each other's time together.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, so just eliminating all the exterior so we can focus on us.
Yeah, all the distractions. And I think that's a good point because me and my new partner, we haven't had a Valentine's Day together yet. And so she's like, okay, well, like, what do we want our Valentine's Day tradition to be? Like tradition? But like, and I was like looking at her sideways until like I heard you say, I'm like, oh, that maybe makes sense to like have something still that you're looking forward to.
Yeah, crazy.
Just like, you know, like on Christmas, like you get gifts. You know, like you're supposed to give a gift on your birthday and like do something special, maybe like what that person likes. But like, yeah, if you have something to look forward to and like, and then like it kind of takes out of like all the guesswork. Or shit, like get them chocolate, a bear, like all these roses, like, so yeah, like maybe I need to revisit that because I was kind of a dick about that. So.
Damn.
All right. Yeah. Damn.
Hindsight's 2020.
Hindsight is 2020. Because she had like good ideas. She's like, oh, like what if we even like do stuff for other people? Like if we like pay for another couple's dinner, like we like make Valentine's Day like a time of service that we do something or like we make Valentine's and service each other later. But she's like, what if we like took stuff like around to like people that we love and know and like, hey, and like kind of be like mobile cupids and like bring everybody snacks. Yeah. And it's like, damn, that's like a lot too. Like that's like a big feat on Valentine's Day. So, and to me, and like one of my points was like, it's just very commercialized, like what holiday isn't. And to me, of course, I'm like, well, you should be telling me how much you love me every day. It should be relegated to one day.
Yeah.
But I mean, we do like, it is like a holiday. Right. So I can understand like why someone would want to make it special. And she's like, well, you're not thinking about me. This is my first Valentine's Day. I'm like, sorry. Like I just like had some really shitty situations, but yeah, I guess we can revisit that. Dang, I hate when I'm like low key wrong.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I like say I'm like, I'm wrong at that low key.
You know what? Yeah. You know what's funny is this book I'm reading right now. That's one of the quotes in there. Well, not even a quote, but it's just like a basically a statement. Is like the thing we love the most as human beings is being told you're absolutely right. That's what we love the most. That's what we go after. That's what we want to hear. The worst thing we want to hear is you were wrong. Like we don't want to hear that at all. Yeah. Now, that's so true. And it's the book's about like your ego and stuff like that, right? So
yeah. I know. Like you were right. I was less right. I like that.
Yeah, I was less right.
It's like I wasn't wrong. I was just less right. Yeah.
I was diet right.
Yeah.
I was right without all the sugar and calories.
0 calorie right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Valentine's Day should be important to you and your partner.
Our for you too. Just
thanks.
So you can have something.
As he like drinks all.
I want to have two. But now you what?
Damn, it's okay. He knows I don't drink soda. But
we'll get straight.
But no, like I think it's just about like you and your partner, right? It should be like unique to you and your partner. But like what about the single people? I don't know what y'all do on Valentine's Day. Like, if you're single, like, do you with like somebody?
In the comments.
Yeah, like, do you still like pamper yourself, maybe, or is it just another day? Do you just go about your business?
You know what? I cannot on Valentine's Day are the people who send themselves gifts or they send themselves flowers. Right? They're like, just fucking go and get somebody. Like, maybe this is the reason why you're single is because you're putting your fucking self on a pedestal. You're like,
No,
You're like,
saving yourself
you're like,
stuff, go
you're like,
ahead.
I am so important that I myself am going to deliver myself the most expensive thing I can get myself. And it's like, maybe that's your problem. You're not selfless. You're not selfless. You're selfish. If you were selfless, you would be like, you know what? I don't have anybody on Valentine's Day. So I ended up taking like my best friend or, you know, another friend who's single or my aunt who is a widow or my grandma, you know. Yeah, I took them out to dinner. But you didn't fucking send yourself flowers.
No, fuck that. There's that. What's that new song? I can buy myself flowers. Draw my name in the sand. Like, I love that. That's like.
It's also written by an egomaniac. I'm just kidding.
Who is it?
I don't know. Yes, then I retract that. A super egomaniac.
Yeah.
I just had deja vu.
I like that. I like. I think women should be able to do it. I think if a man, I guess, that, like sending themselves stuff like
that would be weird.
That's weird. Yeah.
Oh, maybe he's, maybe he's a gay man. That's okay. Then this falls. If it's a gay guy doing the same thing, I put him in the same category as a woman. You shouldn't do it. You should take out your friend who's also single, or your mom if she's single, or whoever else is single in your life, and treat them to Valentine's Day instead of yourself.
Myself nice jewelry because he was single or something.
Okay, maybe jewelry or something, but like don't send yourself flowers.
Add a bear and chocolates and like, oh look, I love myself so much.
Yeah, like I like the idea of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like go to the jewelry shop, or I'm like gonna give myself a hat or like something like that. But like when you're going to the extent of like calling, give you floral, you're like giving them an address.
Right.
You're at work, you're like, oh my god. Okay,
I got flowers.
What's fucked up is like when you like if you do that and you make it seem like someone else did it for you.
Oh yeah, that's.
But do you like make it clear like no, this is a gift to myself, especially if like you're doing it in the Publix. I think that's fine. But if you're doing it under the guise of like
you have a
secret admirer, yeah,
like Claire on Clueless, where she did that, or Cher on Clueless, where she did that to herself.
What was it, Claire?
It was a Claire.
Like that's a little sociopathic at that point. So yeah, like I guess single people, like let us know like what y'all do on Valentine's Day. Are you upset that you then you don't have a Valentine?
Right.
Do you treat yourself? Do you like hang out with families or girls trips, boys trips?
Sit there and be bitter.
Are you just bitter? Yeah.
Get giant boxes of chocolate and watch Netflix rom-coms and cry.
Yes. Oh, not cry.
Bottle of like, what movie was that? Legally Blonde, where she's sitting there and she's eating like chocolates and she's drinking champagne and she's watching that rom-com and he's like, what was it? I can't remember what fucking movie it was, but it was like a scene like, you know, you had me at hello or whatever. And she's all liar. Throws the box of chocolates at the TV because she had just gotten broken up with before Valentine's Day. So yeah.
Yeah. I think there's two ends to that coin. I think women are either like super like fed up with men and they're like, we're not dealing with them at all. I was watching The View and like one of the things were like women are having like less sex. Like there's less sex happening because they're just like, I don't need a man. Like I don't want to, and they're getting into like less relationships because they're just like, I don't want to deal with the bullshit. Like I don't want to deal with like getting cheated on. I don't want to deal with like carrying a man. I don't want to deal with him not like, and like one of the other things is like, I'm not even dating you unless like you're in therapy. Like unless you're like going through therapy. So women are just like, I'd rather be alone. So the number of women that are having sex right now is declining. It's declining.
I wonder how many good men they had in their lives at one time, but they fucking friend zoned them, or they did them dirty, and then now they're like looking for Mr. Right, and they're like, oh fuck, I've fucked up so many times. Well, you know what? It's not me, it's them, and I stand on my ground. I'm not moving from here because it's not me. So look in the mirror. Look in the mirror.
But I think like that's an interesting like that's like an interesting point, right? Like it comes back to so like if we want to circle back around that Walla Anthony's conversation on the Breakfast Club about marriage. She was basically saying like she's not seeing the same enthusiasm, if you will, around marriage. She wasn't bashing marriage. She wasn't speaking out against marriage. She was just giving her observations of like what like trends that she's seeing like within her friend group and like her circles, and just like talking to people that are just like, I don't really want to be married. Like I want to have like a partner. I want to be able to share, you know, my day with somebody, but like the marriage piece isn't as important. So do you think that's like a generational thing? Is that like a culture thing? Is it like the new, like the generations and like how like we were brought up? Like, is it because like we saw our parents getting divorced? Is it you got married and you took that leap and now you're divorced, now you're just like never again? Like where do you think that the not having the need or the desire to get married comes
get
from?
married at all? I think I'll check all those boxes as yes, 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 and yes.
Okay.
Because I think that all I think it all contributes to the reason why people like Lala have that perspective. Lala. Have that perspective. But so marriage was kind of like also ingrained into American society, right? For many years, because the main perspective was like a Christian perspective, right? And
The biblical.
yeah. And in Christian perspectives, marriage is like a sacred act, right? And it has to be a union of two people together forever, right? And then in older times, like our grandparents' generations, it was the norm. Like that's what you did. You got married. Like you went to school, you got a job, you got married. Like that was the culture, right? And as we started to get into different generations, like even the 70s and into the 80s, it was kind of more of like okay, well, I don't want to get married just yet. Like I want to explore my options. And then women started to get into the workforce and started to make money for themselves. So the 90s into the 21st century, the modern woman's kind of like, well, I don't need to get married if I could take care of myself, you know, or I can get a salary like a guy can. So I don't need to marry a man for money necessarily, which I think most, if not all, women would marry for money if we came down to it. Like that was the perspective I looked at. Like when I was hearing Lala talk about how she would never do it again. Well, she doesn't have to do it again. She's very successful, right? She was married to a successful person as well. So by default, she has assets that she took from that marriage too, because they have to split the assets. That's what happens when you divorce. So she has a completely unique perspective where she can say, I'm not going to marry. It's not that maybe it's not even her real decision. She doesn't need to, right? There's plenty of women out there who would benefit from being married.
Well, I think during that conversation, she said that. She's like, it's like easy to get married. It's difficult to get out of a marriage, right? Yep. And especially like if you are a person with money. Right. So she's like, like you said, I ain't doing that shit again. But I think, there's room for her to love. Yeah. And like if you're completely removed from that like situation and you've never been married before, I think now like we're just like more educated on like what marriage is on paper,
right? And
like people are like moving away from like Christianity, like the biblical sense of like marriage and what was expected, because it was like, I don't need to do this to like be a good person. Like I don't like. In the Bible, it doesn't say you must be married to get into the kingdom. It says be fruitful and multiply once you are married. Right. But I also think that marriage is just evolving with, just like the time period. Yeah. Right. So it matches like what we're going through in society. So like that, like the same thought of marriage obviously isn't the same as like when our grandparents got married. There's arranged marriages, and then like we have to look at marriages like in Western culture too. It's not necessarily like the same as it is in like other countries. Like marriage is there for different reasons. It's not necessarily always for love. And I don't think like maybe other countries have like caught up to like America in the sense of like we don't need to do this. Like it's still very much a cultural thing. It's a thing of respect. It's how you show your it's how you it's a form of respect. It's how you show your status, like in some ways. Like if like married people are damn near more revered and respected than non-married people.
That's true.
But I think that's also true here in America also. Like especially at a certain age, like at our age, especially living in a place like Utah, if you're our age, you're not married yet, and you don't have kids, like people are like, what's going on? Like, what's wrong with you? Because like we're expecting to start having kids when we're like 19. Depending on where you live, right? Like on the East Coast, and like people like they don't start having kids until now. Like, that's what's they starting, right? Right. So I think it also like depends on where you are. That has a large influence on how you view marriage. Here in Utah, it's necessarily that's how you gain respect. That's how you get viewed as normal. That's just culturally accepted to be married young. Over there, like over in like the East Coast, like New York or something, if like you find a 19-year-old married, they're like, what the fuck?
What is wrong with you? What are you doing?
Why are you getting married? You've got a whole life ahead of you. So I think it's just like maybe marriage is also like geographical, right? Yeah. Right? Like where are you in the world? Like, and like what is that norm in the part of the world or in the region that you're in? But I also think, because I always say this, I'm like, marriage is paper to me. Right. Like, you know what I mean? The government gets involved. It's capitalistic. Right. I think that's a big conversation that I've had in the past is like, they're making money off of us getting married. And they're making even more money. So we're putting money into the pockets of the judicial system and the courts and lawyers and the law. Like, it's very... the IRS is involved. There's like all these people involved, which is why it's so hard to get out. So for me, I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I need to get married, but this also could be because like my parents got divorced super young. But I'm like, I don't know if I need to get married to show that I'm committed to you. Cause like I've been in like super long-term relationships that the only difference is like, I can't pull the plug on the guy. Right. So like, there are also like loopholes around that. Yeah, there's like loopholes around that. There's separate paperwork that you can file to be able to do those things, right? So like, yeah, I guess it's individual, but I think marriage has also been very romanticized. Oh yeah. And like you can go to a bank now and they have like specific loans for weddings, like, right? Oh, like you can take wedding loans out. Like, you should not be going into debt to get married. Like, right?
Wedding, holy shit.
And people are just like, okay, so do you want the ring do you want the ring, you want the wedding, or do you want the lifelong companionship, partnership, and what goes into it? So, like, what's your motive for doing?
Because that's true, because realistically, in a lot of cases, that's easier for somebody to give you the ring, the wedding, and stuff like that than their undying commitment. You know what I mean? They just give that to you, so you kind of like, oh, well, I'm married, so they must love me, and then they're out cheating.
Well, yeah, they use that to like secure you. Yeah. And they're like, well, we're married, we have to work through this. You have to stay because God said.
And it's a manipulation.
Jesus.
Yeah. It could be a manipulation thing. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of marriages out there that have happened for those reasons. You know, the guy wanted the girl and to be in his life forever or whatever, marries her, and it's like, hey, you're stuck with me now. We're married. Vice versa too. There's women out there who would use that as leverage to like, hey, we're married. I'm not going anywhere unless you give me this, and I'll take this from you, type shit. So yeah, is that really worth it? You should just want the commitment from your partner instead of the whole fucking.
I feel like people like equate the commitment. They're like, well, there's no commitment unless there's a ring. Like,
yeah.
We ain't married. Like, you know what I mean? So I still have this, I can still like have free reign. And so like, even like when you're in a like committed relationship, people are like, well, until you have a ring on your finger, you're single. Right. Like, in the eyes of the government, yeah, that's true. Like, even like my last almost 9-year relationship, whenever I had to check a box, like, are you married? Are you single? Like, I'm always having to put like, I'm a single person, even though like I'm in this like relationship, like we have a house together, like we have a whole life together. I'm still a single person in the eyes of government, and how I have to like move about, financing for a house, filing my taxes, things like that. So technically, yes, like you are a single person, but I don't think like that correlates to like, I can go out and cheat, and I can go out and do these things unless you have those like conversations like with your partner. Right. So I think we have word semantics. I think there's like marriage like semantics and loopholes on how like you can justify not being married, and you can justify on why it's necessary and why it's important and why people are looked at with more respect if you're married. Because like with women, because like what's the term they used to use? Shacking up. Like y'all just shacking up like that. Like your relationship isn't valid.
Yeah.
Because like you're not married.
And they belittle the relationship.
So, right.
Yeah.
So you know, like your partner, you live together. You're not necessarily married, but you have you have kids.
Yeah.
Like
financial obligations.
Yeah. Have all these things. Right. So like, what sets your relationship apart from you know, your brother's relationship? Right. Like in their, you know, they're married. Right. Like, you know what I mean? But you guys still have the same. And maybe that's not the same, right? So like,
but you go time. Yeah.
So like
going.
You know. Again, the legalities of it are different, maybe for you and you, right?
Yeah, for married versus non-married, because like I don't know, like something could happen in a relationship, and you don't have that document saying that like, hey, you have to go through a legal battle now, right? Like, you can just be like, I'm out, or the other person like, I'm out, I'm gone, boom, you're just gone. It's like, okay, it's done. But like with marriage, there's literally a contract that, you know, hey, now we have to go through a legal dispute. And, you know, the person who really is more financially off is going to win because they can afford to defend themselves type thing. You know what I mean? So that's scary.
Well, I think that also like makes it like, that's the decision, right? Like that helps influence the decision on like, dang, do I even want to go through with all this like legal mumbo jumbo? Like, should I just like stay in this marriage because like I don't want to deal with the legality of it? Like, so sometimes people stay in those marriages because they're just like, it's not worth it for me to like disrupt my home, to like lose an income. I now have to like start over, find my own house. Like there's all these like things that trickle down. Again, I was in an almost like 9-year relationship, and she just had like, she was left. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing, right? You know what I mean? Like we were legally obligated to one another. And to me, like, that's still like fucked up, like, you know what I mean? But like I didn't have to go through that red tape, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's freedom. There weren't any obligations. Like we hadn't intertwined our finances and things like that. So I'm just like, oh, I can see like the benefit of like maybe not being married, because that would have been like a lot messier had we been married. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like today's society and today's generation of that's coming up, rather, they feel like they have more choices, right? They're not,
right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them do feel like that. Like they feel like they have more choices, more freedom, whatever. But in some regard too, do you think that even people our age that are not married or anything like that, there's some of them that are kind of putting it too high on a pedestal? Like things have to be absolutely right in their eyes before they would get married. Like how Charlemagne in that same conversation was talking about like, well, women don't want to get married because they're looking for a basketball player. They're looking for a guy with 6 figures. They're looking for a man who's, 6'3" and above. And if you look at the population, which like I hadn't really thought about that until like I watched a lot more of Myron from Fresh and Fit, Kevin Samuels, who's gone, and guys like that. They're like, look, if you look at the data, 6 guys 6 foot and above, that's like 10% of the population of the United States.
That's rare.
Very rare. Yeah. You're not going to find that. And then to find a guy like that who's also single, doesn't have kids, and makes 6 figures, now you're cutting that percentage in half or less, right? So if you have these standards of like, well, I'm not going to get married unless he's this, unless he has that, unless they have this, unless, you're setting yourself up for failure. Like it shouldn't be about what you're getting from it. It should be what you're experiencing by the partner, right? And then Charlemagne was being funny in the sense where like women would call up and they're like, well, it's because of this, I'm waiting for this. He goes, you need to just marry a short king. Yeah. Like you need to set your bar at like 5'7".
Woman's wife is like 5'5". Yeah.
Woman's wife is 5'5". And it was funny. It's hilarious, stuff like that. Cause he's like 5'9", 5'10", I think.
Nope, he's 5'7".
He's 5'7". Holy shit. So he's just a lot of his height. Sorry, man, you gotta be better. But most men are around that. The average height is what, 5'9"? I think it is 5'9". The average height, 5'8", 5'9". That's like the average height of a man in the world, in the entire world, right? The average height of a woman is 5 feet. So
Isn't that 5'5"?
I think the average is 5 feet, like globally. Maybe in the U.S. because there's some tall women out here.
Okay.
But still, like, if you're putting all those parameters on it and stuff like that, like, you're setting yourself up for failure. I mean, and if a guy has those kind of standards, he's an asshole. Like, if like, oh, I'm absolutely not going to put a ring on it unless you weigh this much, unless you cook this, unless you are able to do this and this for me. And then it's like, oh, you're a fucking prick and you shouldn't think that way. But women are at liberty to think like, oh, well, I have to have, he has to make this much. He has to make more than me. He has to be taller than me. He has to be more physically fit than me. You know what I mean? So like, there's I think that's holding some people back. And it's a generational thing because we were kind of programmed that way because of TV, because of music, because of who we had to idolize as kids. You know what I mean? Growing up, like, women are still chasing what they saw on TV,
Are we still, like, are we at this point, like, with the shift in society, are we still chasing, like, what we saw on TV? Or are we just, like, finally chasing our value and our worth and wanting someone to actually meet us, like, where we are too? Like, right? Because I think a large population of women have been with men who they have to, or they've been in a position that they are taking care of, that they're lifting up all the time. And like, they're like, because like there's this whole conversation of like feminine and masculine energy and like your soft girl era, like find a man who can make you softer so like you don't have to like do all of this stuff. Like okay, for me, if I had a husband, especially a husband, there's no reason I'm making your doctor's appointment. Like, there's no reason.
He's a kid.
Like, right. Like, I'm like, I always want to be treated as your partner, not your mother. Like, even doing your laundry, like, that's questionable. But that's, again, a conversation that you have with your spouse. Like, if that's like an agreement that you have, these are all communication things. But I feel like women are just saying, like, no, I'm taking care of nothing anymore. Like, you know what I mean? So, like, I do want him to take care of me, or like we should be able to equally take care of one another. But I feel like it's going to be common for there to be a power, like there is like, or not a power, but there's going to be a financial, it's financially disproportionate sometimes, like depending on, one partner is always going to make more than the other partner. So like, where does like the other partner compensate, right? And you can't throw it in their face all the time, like, right, that you make more, or you do more, like, or whatever. So like, that's super important. But so I don't know if it's like we're chasing like what the standard was before.
Right.
I think it's like how it should have always been. We're looking for someone to like be somewhat, like, I don't think anyone's ever like an equal to you, right? Like, I don't know if like that's realistic.
I respect that for sure, because I do think people should hold themselves and their value, right, in their search for their partner. But I think honestly, a lot of people, men and women, they look back and they're like, well, I did all of that for the wrong person, and so because of that, it hurt me. I'm not doing it for you, even though you're not that person, right? I mean, if you really look at it, like I look at the best relationships I've seen in my life were like my grandparents and my great-grandparents, right? Even though they weren't that really good if you really examine it, but they stayed together, right? They built lives together, they created life together, and they were the cornerstone of the family. But you know what? Grandma had to do a lot of shit that she didn't want to do for him because he was busy doing other shit. That's just the role. Like, that's like a friend of mine on Instagram had put something up, and it's a female, and she put up it was like a clip of some, I think it was a podcast, but it was like, her caption was, men, what do you think the role of a woman is? Like, what is the role of a woman, right, in a relationship? And I put, she's the counterpart. She's the counterpart to the man. They're both the same pieces to the puzzle. Well, they're not the same pieces, but they're pieces to a puzzle, but they can't go in the puzzle without one another. Like, you're a counterpart, right? I get the whole partner thing, and I aspire to have that, right? Like, even my own relationship, because that's something that she has expressed to me, that she wants more of a partnership, right? And so I aspire to do that, but at the same time too, we're counterparts. And counterpart is mean that you're not the same, but you guys both make the cogwheel go, right? Just like a working machine, you got to have a big wheel, you got to have a little wheel, or else the crane ain't moving. You know, like the gears aren't turning without that. So you just have to kind of take your partner's faults and, you know, do what you can to help them with their faults. And at the end of the day, if they can't learn from what you're doing, or you can't teach them, if they're not a teachable person, then yeah, you can move on. But you can't expect somebody to kind of like have all the right pieces at once, or even the right working pieces. Because if you look at it like a machine, you can get a machine, really nice machine, but if one part in that machine isn't working and you can't fix it, it's never going to work right. You know, it's never going to be what you expected it to be.
Yeah, and I like the analogy of the puzzle, because like, right, you have all these pieces to this puzzle.
Yeah.
You need it to look like what it looks like on the box. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, you bought this puzzle for a reason. You want it to look like this. And I think for in a relationship, in a partnership, you all should be, different pieces of that puzzle.
Right.
Like, right. So, it's not like I have to like, I don't think it's like, oh, I have to compensate for you, but like, I'm just like a different piece and our goals are the same. Like we want to create this, we want to curate this, we want to finish this puzzle. Like we want to curate the same type of life and we want to get there. We might just have like different ways of getting there, but our puzzle pieces like fit together.
Yeah.
And I guess I just like the notion of like, they're my better half. Like I've just been like thinking and just like listening to things. I'm just like, I don't know if like someone needs to be your better half. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I feel like you're never going to be completely whole, but you shouldn't ever, I think relationships kind of just like get fucked up because like you expect the other person to like fulfill like what you
exactly
like where you lack. And I that's not fair.
Right.
Like I don't want to like fill in a gap for you. Like, you know what I mean? Like I want to be here to like encourage you and help you figure out like how you can like fill in that gap so that you don't resent me when it's not filled in and you're just like, well, you didn't do whatever, like I'm like this because of you. No, you like that was your work. I've done.
Right. I like I don't think your partner should be the one who's fixing you, right? Yeah, like a lot of people have that perspective though. Like going back to Kevin Samuels, who I know you don't like, but this woman had told him, she's like, well, I need somebody who's gonna handle me. Like if you can't handle me and put me in my place, then you know you're not the one for me. He goes, I'm not a fucking tiger trainer. He's like, I am not a goddamn, lion tamer. I don't want to come home and fight you. He's like, if you can't handle yourself and you can't get yourself in a good mood for me, I'm done. I don't want you. And I was like, I respect that because like, you shouldn't, your partner doesn't have to fix you. You should be a continuous project of your own. And you guys have this life you want to mold together. So you have to fit the mold. Yeah. At the end of the day, you know what I mean?
I hate that. I hear one from her like, you can't handle this. Like I'm too much. Like, that's not what we want to aspire to. Like, like we want to. They ain't lion tamers out here. I like that. I mean, maybe that one thing he said. That one thing like made sense. But and I think for females, like coming from a female perspective, we do have to just have like a certain level of respect for ourselves and just realistic expectations. Like, I think that's probably the biggest takeaway I got from that clip of the Breakfast Club is like your expectations, like what you were saying, you have to like make sure they're realistic. And like, we're always like, it's kind of like they're looking for something better. Like we're looking for something better. Like, well, it's out there. So I'm going to wait. And I think women of color especially do that. And like we get wrapped up in our careers, like we're, being like super ambitious. Another perspective was like white women especially, they have like more privilege, right? So like they have the opportunity to take time off to curate their families. So maybe be a stay-at-home mom, maybe put their their careers and things on back burners, because especially if they're marrying white privileged men, that's like, that's an afterthought for them. They're like, oh, I might go out and do that. But a lot of Black women and women of color, they're the sole providers of their house. So like there's like, no, I got to do this now.
Right.
Like I might not find a man, especially like maybe a man of color, because like our choices are cut down because of incarceration.
Yeah.
Our choices are cut down because like maybe we're just like, I don't want a man with, 3 or 4 baby mamas, like, or, different situations, or a lot of our men, black men, Hispanic men, they're dating white women, like, you know what I mean? So our pool is cut in half, like, you know what I mean? Or like even less than half. And so our circumstances, and like why it might be a little bit more difficult for us to find like what we're looking for, is like our options aren't there like they are for white women. And we have to choose. We have this choice set before us, like, okay, do we want to be financially stable? Do we want to, before we get into this, before we start to have kids, because we might not have a partner to help us with that, or, just society as it is, we might lose our partner to, violence, police brutality, gun violence, incarceration, things like this. So like, these are things that like we have to think about that like our white counterparts don't.
Yeah.
Like, right.
Yeah.
So that's like another.
That's the thing that they don't understand. That I think a lot of people, when they hear, oh, white privilege, they get offended. They think like, oh, I hate the one that I hate the most is, oh, well, I got to get up for work because my white privilege check hasn't come in the mail yet. It's like, that's not what it is. It's the fact that you guys have had more opportunities in life for longer periods of time than people of color. And especially like African-American women, they have it much harder because of those reasons you named. Like for a long time, their partners, their pool, their selection of the pool didn't have the same affordability in the workplace.
They don't get paid,
passed on wealth. They don't have passed on. We couldn't even buy stocks and bonds and shit like that, right? As Hispanic men, as African American men and women. So we don't have those options. Like, I know
now being able to like think about generational wealth, like. So just like in that movie in You People, right? That whole conversation, if you guys haven't seen You People, it's amazing. I haven't watched all of it. Yeah. But like the conversation that they were having at the table about when Regina Hall was like, or not Regina Hall, Nia Long was like, so like, what do you do? I'm a podiatrist or something like, oh, like, okay, well, what did your father do? He was a podiatrist. What did his father do? He was a podiatrist. How like the generations.
Did you catch that he said but he was also a bookie. He was a bookie, and then he went straight and became a podiatrist.
Yeah. So like the whole point to say that is like we don't have that, like, right? So
not an option.
He was like, my grandfather was still picking cotton while your grandfather was looking at people's feet, right? You know what I mean? And getting paid for it, like, right? And we were getting paid nothing. So I think like just tying it back into the marriage discussion is like we do have to look at marriage as like a racial issue also, because it is different across races as far as like what we view marriage as, and like how we the examples that we have seen set for us in homes of color, people of color, they're very successful people who are married, who have been blessed enough to have that. But by and large, I think people of color have seen more negative portrayals of marriage than our white counterparts. So it doesn't seem as appeasing. Like, why the fuck would I do that? Like, I ain't doing that. I saw my mom suffer. Like, my grandmama suffered. She didn't like my granddaddy. Like, so like, why am I going to put myself in that same situation? So I just think our exposure to marriage has been different, and that's up to us to like kind of change like what marriage looks like. It's not I do everything for you. It's not anymore that responsibility is to put on one person. It's very much a partnership, like what your partner is asking for. We both have to contribute to this thing to make it work. And so I think, I don't know, do y'all want to get married? Like,
well, Robert's already married. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because I think a lot more about it, and like my partner has expressed that she doesn't care, right? But then there's like once in a blue moon where she'll bring up like a meme or something, or she'll be like, well, yeah, that's why I'm always just the girlfriend, I feel like that passive aggressive and shit like that. And I'm like, well, we can get married, like,
She doesn't want to hear it. Well, we can get married. Like,
well, the thing is, and I tell her this too, because like we had like a little like not even a fight, but like just like I don't know, yeah, like well, just like razzing each other, right? Like about she's all, well, I don't have a ring on or whatever, and I was like, I bought you 3 fucking rings. I bought you 3 rings in your life. Like
you're so
I've done, yeah. I was like, I've done my part. Like I put 3 rings on your finger, but you know, for whatever reasons, various different reasons, it never came to fruition. So I'm like, yeah, like if we're gonna get married, like I'm just gonna use one of the, you know, I'll find one of the rings that we've already gotten you because somebody got it, and we'll just use that. Because I'm not gonna go out and just spend a bunch, thousands of dollars on another ring. But,
I mean, I do agree with that. Don't go spending money for.
But and then she, you know, she doesn't want like a big wedding or anything like that, which is okay with me. That's fine. Like, I mean, Roman had a really fantastic wedding, and it was big for like our family. It was big.
He's like, yeah.
But like my sister, she didn't have a big wedding. She's had a shotgun go to the courthouse wedding. Love you, Ange, if you're watching this. But she wants a wedding, right? And then like me and my older sister, because the kids have wanted to go to church, and we're getting them through their rites of initiation for our faith. I've reconnected with my faith too, and it's a big deal in the Catholic faith, right? It's like it's a sacrament, they call it. It's like it's a big deal to be married, and you should be married if you have someone in your life and stuff like that. So there's that aspect of it too. I'm like, oh, well, if we get married, it's gonna have to be like a blessed marriage because that's what I want. And she's like, well, I don't want that. I'm not Catholic. And it's like, okay, well, we'll have to compromise somehow. And then when I watched You People, and they had that whole dynamic too, where there are 2 different religions on top of being 2 different races and everything like that. I was just like watching from a perspective of like, oh, I understand this. I understand everything that's going. Yeah, I understand everything that's going on right now.
Yeah.
You know, but
and I think like too, like what you were saying about like, okay, I've reconnected with my faith. Like that's a big deal. And I think, especially here in Utah, like faith has a lot to do with like why we're married. And a lot of those people end up getting divorced because like it's like so like they're doing it so young, maybe not for the right
reasons.
So even though like I love like, you know, reconnecting with your faith, but you know, just like we're making that decision, don't be like, well, the Catholic Church said why, like or like I should do that because it's not going to be successful, like right? Or I'm not saying it's not, but like, I think you can separate like church from like, you know, personal decisions too. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
You know? Yeah.
And I think even from that film from You People, which who wrote that movie? I got to find out who wrote it because it was so well written.
I don't know. The writer of Blackish.
Really?
Yeah.
It was so well written. Like even the jokes were great. Like, but the overall theme of the movie, what spoke to me was the fact that these were 2 individuals that had the right reasons to get married because they fell in love with one another. You know, he was dating other people, trying to go his route or his parents' route, right? Dating people of his faith, of his race, didn't connect. It wasn't particularly that he was attracted to her, like black people, right? Wasn't attracted to black girls or anything like that, but he fell in love with her. She just happened to be a black person of his, you know, Muslim descent, right? But they did everything for the right reasons. They did it because they loved one another and they just got one another. You know what I mean? They didn't force it. It wasn't forced. Where a lot of young marriages, like you were to kind of circle back to what you were saying, people marry for faith, and that's the wrong reason to get married because you're just doing it because you feel like it's the right thing to do, other than doing it because it's what you want to do. You know what I mean? And so if you should find somebody and only marry them if you absolutely want them in your life, they want the same thing, you know? So that was like the overall theme of the whole movie for me is like none of the exterior shit mattered at the end of the day. Like it mattered in certain parts and certain, the telling of the story, but at the end of the movie, at the end of the day, all that mattered was what they had for one another, you know? And that's like what you should hold as the most important thing.
Yeah. Let's cut out all the noise and expectations that you're getting from your family, your religion, society. I think if you find someone that you connect with in marriage is like, if it makes sense for you and you guys have the same values and like reasons as to why you want to get married. And sometimes people get married because like, well, she wanted to get married. I just wanted to keep her happy. That's a terrible reason to get married. But yeah, I think what's the moral of this? The conversation and the story today, what do you say?
I think in short, it's love who you want to love, for the right reasons and explore a person for who they are, not what they are aesthetically, right? Visually. Maybe the person you end up finding as your soulmate isn't a fucking 6'5", tatted to the nines, you know, has the nicest hair of all time. Maybe he's, you know, a little bit, maybe he's a little chubby. You know, maybe he's like 5'7".
Maybe he's Jonah Hill.
Maybe he's like 5'7". I'm just kidding. Throw out. Because I'm gonna be like, I can't do it. You know, but and maybe he doesn't even have hair. Maybe he's balding. I don't know. You know, we're getting old.
Yeah.
But you know, just see people for who they are, not for what you want them to be. I guess that's the overall thing. What do you think?
I just think it comes down to decision and choice. Like you and your partner need to make those decisions and have choices and have options that make sense for you all. Like I said, just, you know, cut out the outside noise, religion, society, expectations. Like what makes sense for you and your partner's life. That goes for marriage, it goes for planning holidays, Valentine's Day, whatever you're doing as a couple, just make sure that you're doing it for you all. And like, it's because it's out of love.
Yeah.
Just do things out of love.
I like that. Do things out of love. That's the title.